Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me clear, Mama? Coach Creeder, how you doing? Kavi, what's going on? JJ, what's popping? Tonight on episode 37, we have former NBA player, former Georgia Bulldog legend, and current Georgia State University assistant coach, Mr. Jarvis Hayes. Coach,
What's going on?
what's happening?
How you doing, baby? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good, man. I had to double take for a second. Like, make sure this ain't Jonas, man.
Listen, I'm telling you, listen. I know Jonas probably listening right now. The one thing you can never say to him is we look alike. That'd be the greatest compliment he's had in 10 years. So we can't give him that much credit.
No question. No question about it, man.
You
Listen,
doing all
man,
right?
good to have you, family. Good to have you on here, man.
Great to be here.
Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know. Yep. I hear you now. Yep, I hear
We
you
got
now.
you. All right,
Yeah,
cool.
yep, I hear you now.
Yeah. All right, my man, my man. So first things first, man. Tell me how you and your family doing during this time, during this pandemic.
We're doing pretty well. It's kind of tough. Like I tell, the staff down at Georgia State, I've been getting kind of cabin fever the last 2 or 3 months. So
Yeah.
it was actually good to get out of the house today and just ride around the city and just go check on my office. It seemed like I haven't seen it in ages. So
Yeah.
it was good to actually step foot in the building.
Nah, no question about it, man. So, like I always do, man, let's go back to the genesis of this thing, man, and let's talk about being born in Georgia 5 minutes before your
That's right.
brother. You understand what I'm saying? 5 minutes before your brother.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So talk about growing up down there, man, and how you fell in love with the game of basketball.
Well, obviously, growing up in Atlanta, I've obviously feel blessed. Raised in a two-parent household. My parents kept Jonas and I, not only us, but all of our siblings grounded. And I actually fell in love with the game of basketball with my older sister, Katasa. She played basketball at Douglas High School,
Okay.
went on to play at the College of Charleston, and scored over 1,000 points there. So,
Okay.
she's 7 years older than us. Jonas and I are the youngest, so she's 7 years older than us. So, she used to give us a pretty good butt whooping.
Okay.
So that's I would say she introduced us to the game of basketball. But the reason why I play is my older brother Marcus. He the one taught me the game, and I spent a lot of time with him growing up, and watching his preparation and watching him prepare through high school.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, we had a family led by our parents, James and Yvonne Hayes, that kept us grounded, and the love for the game just continued to grow. And I'm blessed to be here today.
No question about it, man. So, obviously, you and your brother attached at the hip, man, and it's y'all turn. It's y'all turn to play at Douglas High. Like,
Yeah.
what was that about? You talk about your sister was nice and your brother, your brother was good. So what
Yeah.
was it like? Was it like, yo, we get the next set of Hayes coming in, or
Yeah, it wasn't. Tell you what, listen, I promise you, it wasn't that easy. Like
okay.
Jonas and I, when we got to high school, both of us was maybe 5'10",
Okay.
and my high school coach Jesse Bonner, he's like 6'3", and he's like, you guys will never play for me unless you're taller than me.
Mm.
Um, and to get deeper into it, Jonas, he broke his wrist in ninth grade, so he actually didn't play high school
Mm.
basketball in ninth grade. And I was fortunate enough to play sparingly. I played, I started the first game, and you know, I averaged like 2 or 3 points my freshman year in high school. And, so if you would have told me if the story started there in the ninth grade, not playing at all, I didn't play a minute of varsity until my junior year in high school. And if you would have told me after my ninth grade year, the rest of the story would play out the way it played out, I would have told you you're crazy.
Right.
But that's why I attribute that to the love that we just talked about from my parents and my siblings, because I didn't play for the accolades. I didn't play for the things that came with it. I just loved it. And, it's a difference from being, 5'9", 5'10" shooters from ninth grade year to being 6'5" my sophomore year. So that played a difference too.
We got to find out what your mom was cooking that summer, man.
Listen, cornbread. Listen, like I tell people all the time, my father was born in Villa Rica, Georgia. That's west. That's like 20 minutes east of the Alabama state line. And we grew up eating, like, people don't believe me, T. Now we can't repeat this past this show, but I used to eat possum when I was little.
Okay.
My grandfather used to catch wild animals, and I tried a possum. And I'm not gonna say I eat it, but I've tried it before.
All right,
But I ate standing up, so the food went straight to my feet, and I stretched out.
No doubt, no question about it, man. So senior year comes up, and let's talk about your recruiting a little bit. And what were your last two colleges that you had to choose from, and why did you choose Western Carolina to go to?
Well, that process is a little bit deeper. Jonas and we both were being recruited by different universities, but it was only 3 schools that offered both of us scholarships, and that was Western Carolina, Jacksonville State, and Mercer University. Okay. And, I remember this conversation pointedly, like with my high school coach, probably, the end towards of the summer of my junior year. My high school coach put me into the office and was like, "Yeah, you're going to have some opportunities to get recruited by some larger universities." He was starting to field phone calls from UConn, Texas, Oklahoma, a lot of schools in the Big 12, not so much in the ACC and the SEC. But they was all wanting to know would I split up from going with Jonas. And that was a deal breaker for me. And Jonas was a hell of a ball player in his own right. And we made a pact between ourselves that we was going to go to school together. So, regardless of the amount of attention that I was getting, and he was getting, ironically enough, he was getting recruited by Clemson out of high school, but they didn't want me. Right. So that process was a little bit harder. But the connection with Western Carolina is Chad Dollar, who's now an assistant coach at the University of Georgia. He also went to Douglas High School. And I remember him when we were kids. We basically grew up. He's like a bigger brother to me. And he was coaching at Western Carolina. And we just felt the connection. The city of Cullowhee was a nice, quiet place. And like I say, Jonas and I, we was born in the city of Atlanta, big city of Atlanta, but we spent a lot of our but our summers in Villa Rica, Georgia. So it was nice and quiet. So we were country city boys, if that makes sense. We was comfortable with the quietness of, in Cullowhee with the mountains and things like that. So, and of course Chad was there, just made it that much better for us. So, it was a close call between all 3 of those schools. I had a connection with all 3, but I guess Chad and Western was too hard for us to overcome.
So, I mean, you go to Western Carolina and you become one of the first freshmen to lead. You led the conference in scoring as a freshman.
Yeah, the first freshman in 40 years.
So a lot of kids don't get to play a lot their freshman year, let alone have the ball in their hands and lead the conference in scoring. So talk about the biggest transition for you from high school to Western Carolina to have that type of breakout season as a freshman.
Well, I attribute that again to like being with Jonas. It was a difference being away from home, and even though we're Cullowhee is 2.5 hours from Atlanta, so we wasn't across the country or anything like that. But having Jonas there, being familiar, and always having someone there to get you through the tough times, because that's an adjustment. The resume, like the regime that we had to be on as freshmen, from working out and the training and the things like that. My head coach at Western Carolina, Phil Hopkins, he didn't give us anything, and I was blessed and humble enough from the background that I had, I went into that situation humble, not thinking that I could be somewhere else or I wanted to be somewhere else. You know, I was comfortable and I was happy with where I was then.
Mm-hmm.
And Jonas and I, you know, we had this yin and yang type thing to where we always held each other accountable. And, you know, the preseason at Western, the preseason was very tough for me, very, very tough. You know, I didn't start right out of the bat. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
came off the bench the first couple of games, but you know, my desire to play the game was never tied to the result of it. If you understand what I'm saying, it was always
Right.
tied for the love of it. And you know, when you play the game true, and when your intent is pure, then when certain opportunities come, you'll be ready for it. So, like as tough as that was, you know, I got my first start in my third game, and from that point forward, you know, I just took it and ran with it.
Nah, no question about it. And you damn sure ran with it. So
Yeah,
17, 17 points a game, man, and you lead them in scoring.
yeah,
And you and your brother make a decision to say, we're gonna leave here and we're gonna transfer. Talk about, because obviously, like you said, you guys made the pact to go to, college together and everything, and I'm sure you guys made this decision
yeah.
together. So did this start happening like during the season? Like, talk about those conversations that you and Jonas had to come to this decision to leave Western Carolina.
Well, we didn't talk about it at all. If my head coach and Chad Doll and the staff at Western my freshman year did not get fired, we would have
Oh, okay.
we would have stayed there.
Okay.
And you know, I remember Jonas and I, we were fighting with not fighting with the AD, we was pleading with the AD to, you know, give the guy Phil
Mm-hmm.
Hopkins, give him another chance. You know, the year before Jonas and I, you know, got to Western, I think the team was, I want to say 6-21, 8-21. And my freshman year, we was 14-14. So it was grounds for okay, let's see where this thing goes. Because mind you now, you know, even though it was under a different coach, you know, 2 years after I signed with Western, they end up signing Kevin Martin. And had we stayed, now I'm like I say, history, like hindsight, you don't know. I don't know if Kevin would have went there, if Jonas was and I was still there. I don't know how that would have played out, but it was a place to where Jonas and I felt like we could stay. And the
Mm-hmm.
only reason why we decided to transfer is we felt like that, you know, that was an opportunity we didn't ask for with the coaches being fired. And we just looked at it as an opportunity to where if we were to leave, we would want to come back home.
Mm-hmm.
So like it was it was a decision that we didn't expect. We was preparing, like when the notification came down that they was going to fire our staff, you know, we was already talking about planning for next year, recruiting guys for next year, helping the staff recruit guys for next year, and then boom, it changed. And you know, we had a long, hard conversation with my parents and my brothers and my siblings about, you know, was it the right decision to leave, and you know, ultimately it was.
So now you said Chad Dollar is at the University of Georgia.
Yep.
When he left Western Carolina, did he go right to Georgia, and that's why you guys made the decision to go to Georgia? How did the decision come to Georgia come about?
Yeah, well, Chad, I think he went to Western Kentucky afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, the funny story. Well, it's funny now. It wasn't funny then, but they fired the staff at Western,
Mm-hmm.
and Chad is the one that, you know, we was all crying, and you know, once Jonas and I put out the notification that we was going to transfer, they actually offered Chad his job back for half the price, half of what they was
Uh-huh.
paying in the year before. So that kind of left a bad taste in his mouth and Jonas and I's mouth, you know, because they wanted us to stay, but you know, we just felt like the process wasn't
Mm-hmm.
done particularly right.
Right.
Um, but you know, things happen the way they happen, and you know, I forgot your question. What you just ask me?
I said, what was, so he went to Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
So how did you guys get to the University of Georgia?
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Jim Herrick, when we transferred, he was just coming off his first year at Georgia. So
Mm-hmm.
let's rewind back to my senior in high school.
Mm-hmm.
In '99, Coach Herrick had just got hired at Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
and I made the North-South All-Star game, which is, you know, a pretty big All-Star game in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And he came to the game to see one of my future teammates, Ezra Williams, who had
Mm-hmm.
signed with the previous staff at Georgia, Ron Jerser.
Mm-hmm.
So he was coming down to see him play, and Coach Herrick tells the story all the time. Like, what the heck were you guys thinking? Like, why couldn't you get that guy? So when the opportunity for us to transfer, my dad actually called down to Georgia and was like, "Hey, I got these two boys that want to transfer. Will you take them both?" And once Coach Herrick and my father had their play this year, they introduced each other. He was like, "Well, what are their names?" Jonas and Jarvis Hayes. And before my dad can finish saying the name, Coach Herrick said he'd take us both. And
Nice.
it wasn't a recruitment. We had tons of calls about wanting to transfer after that freshman year, but we was hell bent on getting back to the state of Georgia.
Nice, nice. So now you got basketball in your life, you know what I'm saying? And but you got to sit out of here because of transfer rules, you know what I mean? Which I'm sure, you know what I'm saying, might even be a little bit harder without your brother there, but you got your brother there with you sitting out together. But talk about the transition, of having basketball, having this great freshman year. Now we're not playing at all. So talk about that transitional year.
Yeah, it was the hardest year of my life, my playing career up until that point. It was extremely hard. I mean, you knew you had to sit out. I didn't know, because I knew I loved it, T. I knew I loved it, but I didn't necessarily know how much I loved the game until I didn't play it for that 1 year. And it's ironic, I think as hard as it was, I think it was the best year of my life because, I felt like out of high school, I felt like I could have been just as, impactful at the SEC out of high school. But the difference in my body from my freshman year to my redshirt sophomore year, I think I went to college. I weighed in. I was 6'6", 195. And my redshirt sophomore year, I was 6'6", 215. So that year of getting my body developed, playing against, high major athletes every single day, which was tough at the beginning as well. Each level that I played at, the speed of it just got a little bit harder. And, me being not immune to working and not having no expectations other than just playing the game that you love, it allowed me to develop at a certain pace to where I had no expectations.
Right.
I was just playing the game. I had, like you go to a horse race, you see the horses have blinders on. I was running my race. And, they had great players there. Like D.A. Lane was one of the best players that played in Georgia history. Ezra Williams, who I ended up playing with, was a really, really, really good college player. So, playing against those guys each and every day, especially on the wings, really, really, I honed my skills. And, once I was ready to play, man, let me tell you this story. I remember I broke down, and James Holland, who's I think he's an assistant commissioner in the Big South League or something like that. He was the assistant coach at Georgia. And I remember the first time I put on my University of Georgia uniform, we had picture day. And, it was the first time we put on uniforms. And typically Coach Herrick in previous picture days, when guys put on their uniform, they just take the picture and then he'll have like a little scrimmage or whatnot because, got the uniforms on.
Right.
So I remember the first time I put on mine, we took the picture and we had a little scrimmage or whatnot. And I promise you, I sat on the side on the stanchion for like 3 or 4 hours after that practice, and I just cried. For the longest, I was out there by myself. And Coach Holland was walking by, and he saw me sitting out there by myself, and he just came out there and just sat with me. And I was just crying to him, saying how much I want to play, how much I want to play. It's tough, like just on and on and on. And he sat there with me the whole time. And he just said, as long as you keep that desire like you have now, when it's time for you to play, you'll be just fine. Coach Herrick used to always tell me, as well as on practice, can I do it when the popcorn is popping? It's one thing to do it with in practice with no bright lights, but can you do it when they shine as brightest?
No question. So you answered that question your junior year though. You got out there on that court. You average 18 points a game. You know what I'm saying? Your junior year, first team all SEC. So when that popcorn was popping, you put that Georgia uniform on and you delivered. You ain't have to cry and sit on that basket support no more. You was actually out there. So talk about what that was like. Now you go from telling that story. Like, I'm crying. The coach, man, I can't wait to play. Now you get to play. So now what happened when you put that Georgia jersey on and you got a chance to compete in the tough SEC?
Yeah, I was always fueled by the motivation. I wasn't the highest rated recruit. I'd be surprised if I had one star by my name coming out of high school. And I didn't go to all the big time camps, so I always felt like that I had to work harder than the next person just to get half the opportunity or the look. And the year that I transferred from Western, you hear the whispers or even people that you're close to back at home that you played with growing up. Well, he ain't gonna be able to do that at Georgia. Western Carolina is Western Carolina. You're not gonna be able to do it at Georgia. Never responded, because I learned at a very young age that what someone else thinks of you is none of my business. That's none of my business.
Right.
Now, doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Doesn't mean it doesn't fuel, but it fueled the hell out of me. Excuse my language, because like he did it at Western, but can he be a big fish in a bigger pond? He was a big fish in a small pond. Can he be a bigger fish in a bigger pond? And I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you I didn't have my days. Like I say, Marcus used to motivate me, and the one thing that kind of got to me is as many people's doubting your skills and you're being able to be as effective as you were at the previous stop, not being able to prove that in the moment is like, now, I had hair at the time. Now I can't grow hair, but I had hair at the time. It's almost like I wanted to pull it out. So as soon as I got eligible to play, I was like, I'm not letting this opportunity go. And, I kind of, pushed myself, I guess past my own limitations. But like I said, I was fueled by the love. But all the way up until I sat out after I transferred to Georgia, that's when the purpose to prove people wrong started to develop. All the way through my freshman year was just for the love, and obviously I'm fueled by competition. But my first year at Georgia, so it was a little bit. It was a cherry on top.
No question about it. No question about it. So, like I said, first team All SEC your junior year. You follow that up, first team All SEC your senior year. Now, when people talk about Georgia basketball, they talk about the human highlight film.
Oh, yeah.
First person to be first team All SEC 2 years in a row since Dominique Wilkins. So when you're mentioned in the same breath in Georgia as Dominique Wilkins, how did that make you feel? Like, did that make you feel validated, or you didn't even think about it?
Oh, I definitely thought about it. It takes your breath away. He's one of the greatest players, not only in Georgia history, but basketball history. So anytime you can be put in the same breath with the likes of Dominique, it's humbling. I felt a little bit like I arrived, even after my freshman year. My sophomore, my first year playing at Georgia, I still felt like I had a lot to prove, and I always feel like I had something to prove. But like being mentioned in the same breath with Neat is, words can't describe it, man. It's an unreal feeling, man, to be, in the same breath or mentioned in the same sentence as Dominique.
I bet, man. I definitely believe that. So now, during your senior year, were there whispers like, okay, like he's going to go to the league, he's going to be a first-round draft pick? Were you hearing those whispers during your senior year?
Well, actually, like when my first year playing at Georgia was my redshirt sophomore year. And I actually had the opportunity to leave then. I was projected as a first-round pick in the 2002 draft.
Okay.
But I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to go. I felt like I needed one more year. And, I enjoyed college too much. And quite frankly, I wasn't ready to split up from my brother. And so I stayed one more year, and I ended up leaving. I had one more year to play when I left. I actually left after my redshirt junior year. So, like I said, I felt like I wasn't ready. I wasn't mentally ready. Didn't think I was physically ready, and I didn't want to, I wanted to, prolong the split from my brother one more year.
Right. Nah, no question about it. So the infamous 2003 draft, I call it the infamous 2003 draft.
Yeah.
LeBron James goes number 1, Carmelo goes number 3, and D
D
Wade
Wade
number 4,
5.
Bosh number 5. Like, you know what I mean? And with the number 10 pick, the Washington Wizards select
Yours truly.
Jarvis Hayes from the University of Georgia. So now let me rewind now. My sister used to kick my ass when I was little. My brother Marcus put the ball in my, you know what I mean? He got at me. We had a good career at Douglas High School. Went to Western Carolina, had a great year at Western Carolina. You know what I'm saying? And now I'm a lottery pick. You said I would be surprised if I had 1 star next to my name, and now you're a lottery pick.
Yeah.
Sum that journey up for me, please. Sum that journey up for me, please.
Like I say, if I would have began the story telling you how my high school career began as a 9th grader, averaging maybe 1 or 2 points a game, and and stop telling the story there, but still end up here, I wouldn't believe it. And and like I say, and I give a lot of credit to my parents, because they kept us humble. They kept us, playing for the love. I always played for the love, and that drove me. And I can't say it enough to where I was never tied to the result. Yeah, I had my favorite players that I watched growing up. My favorite player was Scottie Pippen, so I always looked at his games, tried to catch as many Bulls games. I was a really big Hawks fan. But I was never tied to the result of what my passion was. I was always more in tune with just loving it, taking one step at a time, being better today than I was yesterday. And yes, and I tell people all the time about having a vision board. Like, I'm a vision board type person. I most certainly am. I put something on the wall and I see something I wanted, I put it up there so I can see it every single day. But I don't look at it anymore, because like if you when you put a vision board on the wall, most of the time, most people's vision board is not going to be with the obstacles that you got to get through to get what you want. Right. So I saw what I want, and I was more in tune with doing the work each and every day to be better than I was yesterday. I can't be better at something that I hadn't attained. I had to be better at the best version of myself today. And before you know it, it's like chopping wood or knocking down a brick wall. So after a while, from, being committed, being true to yourself, after a while, you're going to look up and everything that you wanted to be staring in your face. And that's not something that I actively set out to achieve. It just happened because I was just pure to myself, and ultimately, my love of the game. But I tell you right now, on draft night, like when David Stern called my name, that wasn't the first thing I was thinking about. Let me tell you something. My bottom of my shoes was slick, like all of us. We had big suits. I'm pretty sure everybody done seen the pictures of the trash bags that we all had, baggy suits. The first thing I was thinking about when he called my name, Jarvis, just don't trip up these stairs.
Please don't.
Going to shake this man's hand. Just hold it together. Just hold it together till you shake his hand, and you'll be good to go.
Oh man, so so you finally made it, man. You go to the Wizards, second team or rookie team. You know what I'm saying? Your rookie season. So talk about the 4 years that you spent in Washington, and talk about the learning curve.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying, that you experienced in Washington.
Yeah, it was like, now the league is a different beast. And the learning curve, the speed, the size of the players and the speed from at Georgia to being in Washington and in the league is drastic. It is drastic, but I never felt out of place. The learning curve was different because of all the time that you had, like you're an adult. Like, so, at Georgia or at Western Carolina, you have training camp, you have practice, you have preseason conditioning. My rookie year, I was drafted on the 26th. The next week, we're practicing, getting ready for summer league. So, you're going through the pomp and circumstances of the draft process, and you're somewhat in shape. But once it becomes a job, it's a job. And and the subsequent years, year 2, 3, and 4, you come to training camp. Like I said, in college, you normally have a period to where you can work yourself into shape. But when you're in the league, you start training camp and you start playing games the very next week. You got 1 week of training camp, If training camp starts on a Monday, that very next Monday, you're playing your first preseason game. So learning the professional side of the game, meaning that, you come to training camp not to get in shape, you come to training camp in shape.
Right.
And, but nevertheless, I had, great experience in Washington, dealt with a couple of nagging injuries that I felt, impacted me a little bit. But nevertheless, I feel like that everything happens for a reason. And, I'm blessed to be able to have been able to play the game for as long as I have, see the places I've seen, and, become the man, husband, the father that I am today to my wife and my kids.
Right. Nah, no question about that. So after your 4th year, they declined the, they don't pick up the option, and you go sign with Detroit. Talk about the veteran Detroit teams backing up Tayshaun Prince out there.
Listen, just like the night is different from the day, going to Detroit was so much different than Washington. And I say that with no shade towards Washington, but the organization had staunch leadership in Chauncey Billups. Flip Saunders, great head coach, was, leading the ship. Rasheed Wallace, Tonio McDyess, Chauncey Billups, Rip, Tayshaun, the leadership. And of course, they was coming off 5 consecutive, trips to the Eastern Conference Finals, winning the championship and playing in another finals. So the culture of that team was like no other I've ever seen at any level. You don't see too many professional basketball teams to where, most of the time you have certain guys clicked up with certain guys. It's not necessarily looked at negatively. You just rock with, who you rock with, and, everybody tastes is a little different. But Detroit, when we get there, I remember the day that I signed, the day I think Joe Dumars picked me up from the airport. I met a few of the guys that night. Like that's rare. And before we had one training camp practice, we would all get together as a team, whether at Shee's house or at a restaurant in town, and just mingle and get to know each other and just, have that time to bond as a team. And it showed on the court. We made it to the Eastern Conference Finals again. I think we won 59 games that year. Ran up against a buzzsaw in the 2008, Boston Celtics, the first year of the Big Three. So, that was a tough hurdle, obstacle that we couldn't get over. But the experience in Detroit was second to none.
No question about it.
I grew up as a professional in Detroit.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense because they had nothing but pros there. They had pros. No question. Now you go to New Jersey.
Yeah.
And and what I feel when I was watching you was a very important piece to that, to that team coming off the bench, and maybe they, when you go from a veteran team to now kind of a younger team, like you're kind of like the vet on that team, you know what I'm saying? And now you're talking about night and day all over again. You understand what I'm saying? Which is the business of the league. So now talk about going to New Jersey after that experience in Detroit.
Yeah, well, my first year in Jersey, Vince Carter was still there. He's a great leader, and he was a great player then. We just missed the playoffs my first year. It was a lot of ups and downs, and New Jersey was in the beginning process of starting their rebuild. From the J. Kidd and Richard Jefferson years, from going to the finals. So they was just in probably the full reboot mode, and that was the last year that Vince played in Jersey. But it was a great experience, But the second year I played in Jersey was pretty tough. I tore my hamstring on opening night, and I missed. I can't remember how many games we missed. We started 0-18, and by the time I was able to get back from injury, we was like 3-30 or something like that. So the second year was tough, but you knew what it was. You knew it was in the rebuild, and you tried to make the best as the best out of it as you can. But, all of my experiences are never negative. You always learn from them. And, at the end of the day, you strip all of it away. You're still playing a game you love. Everybody wants to win, but you're playing a child's game and getting paid pretty well for it.
Yeah, very, you know what I'm saying? And I think the big thing is what I talked to some of my guests who have been in the league is like, there's so many people who start to play basketball and would give their right arm to be in the position that the guys in the NBA get. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it can't, it can't work out for everybody. So everybody in that 2003 draft can't have the career that LeBron had or D Wade had, or you know what I mean? But everybody's journey is
Right.
there.
You got to run your
journey.
own. You got to run your own race.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you leave New Jersey in 2010, and now you're going to play ball overseas for a little bit.
Yep.
The difference between the NBA and Europe. Talk about that.
It's a big difference. First, let me say, I mentioned earlier that I grew up as a professional when I went and played in Detroit. Mm-hmm. I feel like the decision for me to go overseas during the lockout, I grew up as a man. Because being here in the States and you have a lot of people that you depend on, and like you kind of take certain things for granted. But going to a foreign country that you've never been to, and it's a language barrier. The living is different. Not saying it was bad, it's just different. You have to rely on your own self a lot more than you ever did. And I feel like I grew up as a man. Now, from a basketball standpoint, the game is completely different. It's probably a little bit more. How can I phrase this without this sounding crazy? But it's probably a little bit more physical.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit more physical. Obviously, the defensive rules, it's very similar to college. It's no 3 seconds in the key. So if you don't have the ability to shoot the ball or extremely creative with the ball, then it's going to struggle. You're going to struggle. But from the rules, the pace of play, with the barrier, it was tough. That first year in Turkey was tough. It was very tough for me, but I got the hang of it, and I'm glad I made the decision to go. Like I say, I grew up as a man.
Right. Now, no question about it. So at some point, like the ball stops bouncing at some point.
Oh, yeah.
And at some point it's been a good run, but sometimes we got to do real, we got to do real life now. We got to figure out the rest of our life without playing the game. I'm not going to say without the game, but without playing the game. So you got your start in 2018 coaching at Morehouse.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And now you're at, Georgia State with, somebody who I respect a ton.
Oh, most definitely.
And Rob Lanier. So talk about now being on the other side of the game now, where now you're giving back all the experience that you've had as a player to younger players now.
Yeah, then I'm going to say something about the Noahs, because I'm pretty sure it's a lot of guys, that played. And when I tell you the silence of when the ball stops, it's deafening. Mm-hmm. Like the silence, and you can fill in the blank, the silence of ... of playing, what comes with being a player, is deafening. And I think me going overseas, it kind of allowed that silence to come at a nice gradual pace. So, it wasn't as dramatic, and I actually retired in 2015. My dad passed in 2016. So I had some things to take my mind off of the actual, career being over. But getting to Morehouse, I tell Jonas and I have this conversation a lot. I never thought in a million years that I thought I would want to coach. I thought, man, there's so much I got to learn. I'm not, you see other coaches and they're good in certain areas, and I didn't think I would ever want to be it. And I remember I Carl McRae, who's he's the director of one of the best AAU programs in the country, the Atlanta Celtics. Mm-hmm. His son used to train me, so I used to see Coach McRae a lot, throughout the years or whatnot. He asked me about, did I want to come help him out with the Celtics? And obviously I said yes, but I was like, I don't know if I want to coach. And that's where my definition of a coach started to change, because, here I am pouring into individuals who have a dream. Mm-hmm. And, my definition of a coach isn't to coach basketball players, but to develop men. Yes. And that was an opportunity for me. Once I got around kids with a passion, that's when the desire for me to coach started to blossom, and it became more than just coaching, right? Mm-hmm. And, I did that for a couple of years, and Coach Brewer, like I say, had no reason to hire me from a can of paint. I feel forever indebted to him. He gave me an opportunity, and the same for Coach Lanier. Like, he had no reason to hire me, and I'm being honest. With his history in coaching and the things that he's done, the players that he's coached, the places that he's been, you know, you know, I'm blessed to be a part of this staff, and learning from him. Like, with me being the youngster in the room, Coach Kreider is an
Mm-hmm.
extremely smart individual. Coach Warren is an extremely smart individual.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I can talk to each and every one of them, but I learned so much by just watching how they act, watching how they, perform their duties, and watching how they interact with the players and even with recruits. And so, like, the knowledge that we have on the staff led by Coach, Lanier is, I couldn't be in a more perfect situation. And Coach Warren always tells me that, I don't know what the heck I did in my previous life, but for me to be at the Division I level, and this be my first opportunity at the Division I level, not only at Georgia State, this is my hometown,
Yeah.
and be on the staff with individuals like Coach Lanier, Coach Warren, and Coach Kreider is, I think I'm dreaming. I'm in hog heaven, man.
Nah, no question about it, man. And I mean, I started this podcast back in April, man, and Georgia State men's basketball is family to me right now. You understand
That's right.
me? So, Coach Lanier is on here, Coach Kreider's on here, my man Uncle Cliff is on here right
Oh, we
now.
got
So
the
this
family,
is
hit the
it's
family on.
yeah, it's a basketball family down at Georgia State right now, man. So like that's great, man. And I think you have so much to share with the players and with the experience, and obviously like a lot, these kids are trying to get to the NBA. You know what I
That's right.
mean? And I think from the time they get the ball in their hands now, it's NBA or bust. And to have somebody on staff like yourself who's gone through it, the ups and downs of it and everything, I think is valuable to anybody's staff. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And obviously coaching them, understand it, man. You guys are doing great things down there, man. So you done made the full circle. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So as we get ready to wrap up, I like to do these quick hitters. But before we do, obviously, we've been in a 2020 has been a rough year,
Yeah.
with the pandemic, and now, with all the issues around social injustice once again in our country. And you and your wife have sons. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? Talk about the conversations that you've had, if you don't mind sharing. Talk about the
Yeah.
conversation that you've had with your sons around this.
Yeah. It's tough, and like my wife and I was sitting on the outside a couple of days ago, and my kids are 10 and 11. And like, what do you say? You try, like, on one hand, you don't want them to watch the TV, but on the other hand, you want them to be aware.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it's unfortunate that we have to have these conversations about equality and being treated in a certain light. You just always try to preach them to do what's right.
Right.
And sometimes when you do what's right, it don't always turn out the way you want it to turn out. So
Mm-hmm.
I can't even get the words. Like I said, that's something that my wife and I struggle with right now. Like, how do you? I mean, because you can't hide from it. You can't deny it. It is what it is. And our kids are in the age to where, they read the internet. They ask questions. They know who George Floyd is. They know who he is. They know about the incident here in Atlanta, to where the guy was, murdered by the police on Friday night. They know about that. They see these things.
Mm-hmm.
So you just try to preach to them to be the best individuals that they can be, and just try to stay out of harm's way. Like, I'm afraid every time I leave my house.
Yeah.
Like, and that's me honestly speaking. I'm afraid every time I leave my house. I live over here on the west side of Atlanta, probably about a mile and a half from the incident the other day on University Ave in Atlanta, and I've gotten pulled over in my own neighborhood asking me why am I here. It's certain things that you can't explain. It just comes with the territory. And I just try to teach my kids, for one, I learned from my dad, after he passed, um, I caught more lessons than he actually tried to teach me verbally. So whenever I feel like that I'm losing the right words to say to my boys, I try my damnedest to walk in a way that they see me and let my actions speak more louder than words when they see me interact with police officers, when they see me interacting with anybody. Like anytime I get lost for words, I try to lead by my actions more than anything.
Absolutely. Nah, powerful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with me. That's super important during this time. So let's get to my quick hitters right now. I'm going back to Georgia. I'm going back to the SEC.
All right.
Toughest player you ever played against at Georgia?
Vincent Yarbrough, Tennessee.
Tennessee. I just had Ron Slay on.
Yeah,
on
them
last
boys
week.
were tough. They were tough. You hear me? Slay stole my player of the year my last year.
Yeah, Ron Slay. I just had Big Ron on last week, man. Just had Big Ron on last week. Vincent Yarbrough was tough. Super athletic.
Yeah, he was
Super
tough.
athletic. Now you get to the NBA. You get on the court. Who was that player that kind of gave you your introduction to the league where you were like, man?
Oof. I mean, hell. Like the first time I played Kobe, he didn't necessarily tear me up, but like anytime you're out there with the Mamba, he's given me 40 before. I think it might have been my second year. T-Mac gave us 60. But I would probably say the first time I matched up against, my favorite player was Scottie Pippen, and my first ever NBA game was against the Chicago Bulls when it was Pippen's last year. So you talk about nervous. My first ever shot in the league, I don't think I hit anything. It was. I was coming off a down screen and I hit nothing but air. But I think the first time I played Kobe was the first surreal moment. Kobe was in his seventh year in the league at that time, so he's like super prime Mamba. He was number 8. So the first time you matched up against him, that was damn it, you in the real deal now, buddy. So if you're gonna strap up and you're gonna get run over.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So if you could have dinner with 3 individuals, doesn't have to be sports related.
Right.
A dinner with 3 people, who would those 3 people be?
First one would be Barack Obama. Martin Luther King, and Muhammad Ali.
Now that's a hell of a dinner. That's a hell of a dinner. Tell me why.
Just the inspiration that they had from a sports standpoint, the plight that Ali went through, sacrificing the prime of his career to stand on something that he felt strongly about. And just the plight that he went through as a black athlete in America. And the voice and using the platform that he used to get his message across. Martin Luther King, especially being here from Atlanta, you look at that. I look at a lot of his speeches and some of the words, his prophetic words, and just the march that he led, the nonviolent march. And you get in America to where you have individuals that have problems with. Now I'm gonna say it. You have problems with protesting nonviolently, but you also have a problem with the unrest that comes with not being heard. And his messages ring louder and louder like he was here today, because it's almost like it's a split image. Back then it was the civil rights movement. Now it's the social injustice and racial injustice. So his message still rings true. And Barack Obama, with everything that he stands for me personally, being the first black president in the United States of America's history, and my parents being able to see it. I remember stories where my parents were not able to vote. My grandparents weren't able to vote. you know, it hurt me to my heart. I remember my grandfather in Villa Rica, Georgia, and this is where my eyes started to be open to where my grandfather used to collect boxes in Villa Rica, Georgia, and he used to go get them recycled. He was a box collector. And it was a young white man who I guess owned the shop, and I used to go with my grandfather on the back of his truck. And I just felt a certain kind of way about the gentleman calling my grandfather a boy.
Mm-hmm.
And he couldn't have been he couldn't have been no more older than like 24, 25. My grandfather's 70.
Mm-hmm.
What you got for me, boy? You know, so
Yeah.
you know, I don't want to get into that, but you know,
Right.
like just seeing certain instances, you know, and growing up, especially here in the South, and being, you know, privy and enlightened to a lot of different things, you know, those three individuals I feel like can relate to me because everybody have a certain level of anger inside of them. And having the thought of Barack Obama, Muhammad Ali, and Martin Luther King constantly in my mind kind of quells and say, hey, there's another way.
Absolutely.
You know, so those are the three individuals that, you know, I try to, you know, listen to as much as I can to every time they speak. And I actually had the chance to meet Muhammad Ali when he was alive. He actually came to my high school and spoke. So that was a surreal moment for me as well.
I can believe it. I can believe it. So on my podcast, I try to keep it peaceful. I try to keep it professional on here as much as possible.
Yep.
But tonight, I got to go against that a little bit. I don't know if your brother is on here, but I'm asking this question right now. I'm putting the ball on the court.
Me.
Who wins the one-on-one game today? I'm trying to keep it professional as possible.
Me.
I gotta start something tonight, though.
I'm winning.
You winning it.
Put the money on me.
Okay.
I don't know if Jonas listening. I don't know. I know I see my other brother Raheem just joined. I'll tie him up too.
Oh man. If Jonas ain't on here, I'm a damn sure make sure he see it though.
Yeah, make sure you see it. Cut this and send this straight to him. I'm tearing him up.
Oh man, I'm gonna get it, man. Listen, I'm telling you, man. Listen, man. Thank you so much. I was looking forward to this, man. I appreciate you giving the time to come up here and share your story with me, man. When this is all over, I owe Georgia State a trip down there anyway to come see the Georgia State family, man. I look forward to meeting you in person, man.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time, and God bless you and your family, man.
Thank you so much for having me, man. Thank you so much. I can't wait to meet you as well.
Absolutely. Have a good night.
All right, you too.